What is Uniform Civil Code? What was the historical background in India? But what happened after independence? The Hindu Code Bill, as it is famously called. Now, that is not one law, but why do you need a Uniform Civil Code? Why did the Constituent Assembly say the state should endeavor to get a Uniform Civil Code for the citizens across the country? What are the issues? It's not a simple thing. If it was a simple thing, it would have been done at the time of independence itself, at the time of commencement of the Constitution itself. Why did the Constitution makers leave it for future? Because there are challenges. What is the way forward? First and foremost, it cannot be rushed through. There has to be wide range of discussions. Hi friends, welcome. So you would have heard a lot of news about the Uniform Civil Code. Now the Law Commission has sought the opinion of various stakeholders on the Uniform Civil Code. The Parliamentary Committee has sought discussions on the Uniform Civil Code. The Prime Minister has talked about it recently in one of the public meetings. So in this video, we'll try and understand what is Uniform Civil Code, what was the historical background in India during the Constitution making, Constituent Assembly debates, what happened briefly, what is the position after independence that has happened, why do we need a Uniform Civil Code, but what are the issues and the challenges surrounding it, and the way forward. That will be the brief summary of this video. And at the end, as always, for civil service aspirants from a UPSC angle, State Public Service Commission angle, what can be the possible questions that can be asked depending on this topic towards the end. So, Uniform Civil Code. So, in India, this is the historical background. In India, different communities, different religious communities, Hindu had their own civil code, the Parsis followed their own civil code, the Muslims had their own civil code, and the criminal code was also based on Mohammedan law and various other scriptures at various parts of the country and all. But the criminal codes were streamlined, or they were made common for all the people of India, starting with the Indian Penal Code, which was enacted in 1860, the Criminal Procedure Code, which followed thereafter within a few years in the 1860s, and the Indian Evidence Act of 1872. So that made the criminal code common for all the people in India, and rightly so. Whereas the civil codes, what is civil code? Something which deals primarily with marriage, inheritance, succession, divorce. See, taxation is also a civil code, partly, mainly. Contract can be a civil code, but those are governed by common laws almost throughout the country. But for marriage, divorce, inheritance, three main issues, right, which are civil in nature. Each religion followed its own code. In fact, before 1937, when the Shariat law was made applicable to Muslims, even in places like United Province, which is today's Uttar Pradesh, Central Province, which is today's Madhya Pradesh, Bombay, which is today's Maharashtra and Gujarat, even the Muslims followed the Hindu laws for the purpose of succession. This has been quoted even by Dr. Ambedkar in the Constituent Assembly debate. But the fact is, there was no uniformity in the civil laws. The tribals of the Northeast and rest of the country had their own customs and traditions. So that was discussed in detail in the Constituent Assembly, which framed our Constitution. Of course, there were differing opinions from different members. Some of them wanted a Uniform Civil Code, but some of the minority members were against it. In fact, the Committee on Fundamental Rights, which was headed by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, by a 5-4 vote, decided that it is not right time to make it compulsory and make it part of fundamental rights. And finally, it was decided that it will be in the directive principles of state policy. That is one part which is not enforceable in a court of law, but a very important part which provides instructions to the government for achieving various things to ensure social, economic and political justice. And one of the articles, Article 44 of the directive principle, says the state shall endeavor means sincerely attempt, the state shall endeavor to bring a uniform civil code for all the citizens across the territory of India. Now that was the position when the Constitution was adopted. But what happened after independence? The Hindu Code Bill, as it is famously called. Now that is not one law, but a combination of 4 different laws which deals with marriage, which deals with succession, which deals with adoption. The Hindu law was reformed in the 1950s, to ensure that women had equal rights to men when it came to marriage, when it came to divorce, when it came to inheritance. Now, whether they are suitably implemented, whether the society has reformed itself completely, that's a different debate. But having said that, at least on paper, the law has been reformed to a large extent, though there are certain things which still favor the patriarchal society of ours, but by and large, they have been changed. The Muslims are governed by the Muslim application of Shariat law, which was enacted in 1937, which continues to be applicable to Muslims. Now, there are issues surrounding that where when it comes to gender justice, polygamy is allowed in Muslims, though, it's not that everybody practices it, but still legally it is allowed. In terms of divorce, the Muslim women cannot divorce as easily as the Muslim men can do, but this is based on their Shariat law, based on their Quranic verses, and that is the Muslim personal law that is applicable. Christians and Parsis have their own personal law and customs. There are certain provisions of the Marriage Act and Divorce Act which are applicable to Christians also, with some modification. So broadly, the point is each community, each religious community in India follows its own civil code, right? And there is a difference between the various civil codes. Now, why do you need a uniform civil code? Why did the Constituent Assembly say the state should endeavor to get a uniform civil code for the citizens across the country? First and foremost, guys, it is the freedom of choice, isn't it? I mean, these civil laws are based very closely on the religious scriptures of various communities, and that is a fundamental right. I'll come to the issues in a bit. That is a fundamental right under Article 25 and Article 26. But Article 25, every person has the right to practice his religion, his or her religion, and if their civil laws are based on their religious scriptures and sanctions, then they have a fundamental right to practice it. But please remember, that's not an absolute right. Fundamental right to practice religion is subject to public order, morality, and health. So whatever is in the interest of morality, it is immoral to treat women in a discriminatory manner in a modern society. You can always take that argument. So the main reasons why you need a uniform civil code is, firstly, it gives the freedom of choice. See, if you still want to follow your religious scriptures only in terms of divorce, in terms of marriage, in terms of inheritance and all, you can feel free to do it. But you should have a choice. The women should have a choice to follow a secular civil law which gives equal rights to her, just like the men in various communities. It definitely will help in giving up our sense of identity and allowing for more, unity amongst the people. Having said that, pluralism is India's strength. Diversity is India's strength, no doubt. But definitely, this can help in solidifying the unity of the country. But most important, guys, uniform civil code, ultimately, it's not a religious issue, as it is made out to be by, various political people. The main core from a constitutional point of view, from a societal point of view, it is gender justice. The women should have equal rights like men when it comes to marriage, divorce, and inheritance. And that is why you need a uniform civil code. But what are the issues? It's not a simple thing. If it was a simple thing, it would have been done at the time of independence itself, at the time of commencement of the Constitution itself. Why did the Constitution makers leave it for future? Because there are challenges. Number one, as I told you, there is a fundamental right to practice your religion. And if your personal laws are based on those religious scriptures, then you have one article and one part which is enforceable, which is guaranteed, and another part and another article which is a directive, which is not enforceable in a court of law. So how do you balance these two? But having said that, the right to practice religion is not an absolute right. It is subject to public order, morality, and health. And directive principles are important directives, but this is a major issue which needs to be resolved. Wide-ranging customs, not just amongst the Muslims and the Christians and the Parsis, the tribals of the Northeast. In fact, you would have read in the newspapers, the parliamentary committee chief, Sri Sushil Modi, has said, we will keep out the tribals out of the Uniform Civil Code, because there are constitutional guarantees which have been given under Article 371A, 371B, 371C, E, F, H and all so on and so forth for all the northeastern states. Nagaland, any law which violates the Naga customary law will not be applicable in the state unless the state assembly extends it. Same with Mizoram. The Sikkim traditions will be preserved. These are constitutional guarantees that have been provided to the northeastern people and various tribals across the country. So how do you say that everybody has to follow a uniform civil code when there are these constitutional exceptions and differences which have been allowed, considering the unique tribal culture and the unique tribal customs which are followed by different parts of the country, in different parts of the country. And most important, guys, ultimately society has to change. See, today, as I told you, the law for the Hindus states that women have an equal share in the property. But does it happen in reality? Not always. There is something called as Hak Tyag, which is signed, in northern part of Punjab, Haryana and few other states and all. They signed the Hak Tyag. Hak means right, Tyag means sacrifice. So the women sacrifice their right to property in favor of their brothers and male members of the family. Well, whether all of them are voluntary in nature, we can't be sure of, right? And most important, look at the sex ratio or the child sex ratio, which is the most important metric in my view to see whether a community respects its women. And throughout India, right, it's not something to brag ourselves about. It has seen a decline in the past many decades. The sex ratio, which is how many females for every 1,000 males, the child sex ratio, which is how many girls for every 1,000 boys, across community, especially in the Hindus and the Jains and all, it has seen a steep decline. Now it is stabilizing, of course. So the point I'm trying to make is societal change is important. But having said that, legislation is the first important step. The law should give the choice to people, right? And then the society should also reform itself. So guys, it is not a simple thing. It's not something which, where you pass a law and then you implement it and it falls in place. There are serious challenges in this. So what is the way forward? You need a uniform civil code for certain reasons, but there are challenges in its implementation. What is the way forward? First and foremost, it cannot be rushed through. There has to be wide range of discussions. Just about 5 years back, the Law Commission in 2018 said the time is not ripe, it is not desirable to have a uniform civil code. But now, after that, there has been not much debate and discussion about it in the country. Now, if it is required, there has to be more discussion and debate with all the stakeholders of religious communities, of tribals. It's not an overnight thing that can be implemented. Secondly, most importantly, uniform doesn't mean common. The Constitution doesn't say that we will have a common civil code for all the citizens. It says the state should try to bring uniform civil code. So there can be different personal laws which are in line with the religious scriptures, but wherever there is discrimination, wherever the women are at a disadvantage, those can be incrementally reformed so that the women get equal rights within those personal laws. At the end of the day, as I told you, it need not be commonality, right? We are diverse. We are diverse set of people. While we live in the same country, we have our different cultures, religions and practices and all that. But it should be uniform to ensure gender justice. And to begin with, in fact, Dr. Ambedkar said in the Constituent Assembly, it can be made even voluntary. It need not be made compulsory. Voluntarily, people can sign up for uniform civil code, even though they may be governed by their own personal laws which are different. They can voluntarily sign up for the uniform civil code, and at a future point of time, it can be made mandatory for everybody to follow when the society has accepted it in the right spirit. So I hope you found this video useful as to what is the position in India as of now. Why do we need a uniform civil code? What are the challenges? But what is the way forward, in my opinion? Of course, we'll have to wait for what is the draft that comes before the Parliament House and how the discussion takes place. But these are the points that one should keep in mind, before implementing this uniform civil code. And now, from a UPSC perspective, prelims, there was a question even few years back in the prelims. Uniform civil code is given in which of the following parts of the Constitution? Fundamental rights, directive principles, fundamental duties, 7th schedule. That's a standard way UPSC asks questions when it comes to checking on a particular provision in the Constitution? And it's a straightforward answer. It's the Directive Principles of State Policy. And there was a mains question, I think in 2015, if I'm not wrong, and it can be repeated again because there is a lot of debate and discussion. In a different way, it can be asked, what are the challenges in implementation of UCC? So for that, you give the historical background. What is the current situation in the introduction? What are the challenges? Why it is important for gender justice, for equality in the society, without a doubt. But what are the challenges that needs to be addressed in terms of right to religion versus UCC, in terms of different practices which are constitutionally guaranteed for the tribals, how societal change is important, though legislation is the first step, and what can be the possible way forward to achieve this. I hope you found this video useful. I'll see you again with another video soon. Thank you.